In the history of modern warfare, no bolt-action rifle defined an entire generation of combat like the Carabiner 98K. For German infantry from 1935 to 1945, this weapon wasn't optional. It was the backbone of every squad, the primary arm of every soldier, the tool that had to work when everything else failed. Over 14 million were built. Millions more were captured, refurbished, and used in conflicts from Korea to Vietnam to the Balkans. But here's the question that matters. How accurate was it really? Today we break down the real story behind the Kar-98K's battlefield accuracy. Let's begin. When the Wehrmacht adopted the Kar-98K on June 21, 1935, they inherited something the German military had been perfecting since 1898: the accuracy requirements for every rifle leaving the factory. Here's what the German military demanded. Each rifle had to place 5 out of 5 shots within a 12-centimeter circle at 100 meters. That's roughly 4.7 inches. Miss that standard, and the rifle got rejected. The Germans didn't measure accuracy the way Americans did. They used a circular error probable method. They fired groups, drew a circle that captured half the hits, then doubled it to get a 93.7% hit probability. Different math, same goal. Consistency under pressure. According to pre-World War I military manuals, the Gewehr 98 firing standard, 154 grain ammunition, averaged 34 centimeters vertical dispersion and 28 centimeters horizontal at 300 meters. That translates to roughly 3.9 minutes of angle vertical, 3.2 minutes horizontal. Not match-grade precision, but more than adequate for combat. The Kar-98K, being shorter with a 23.6-inch barrel compared to the Gewehr 98's 29-inch barrel, carried the same acceptance standard. 5 rounds, 12 centimeters, 100 meters, every single rifle. For sniper variants, the bar went higher. Rifles that showed exceptional accuracy during factory testing got pulled aside. They received telescopic sights and went to specialized units. These weren't custom-built sniper rifles. They were production guns that shot tighter groups. German sniper Matthäus Hetzenauer, who achieved 345 confirmed kills on the Eastern Front, said he could guarantee a headshot at 400 meters and a chest shot at 600. He used a Kar-98K with a 6x scope. His contemporary, Sepp Allerberger, said the same. Both noted they had no need for magnification beyond 6x. Some reported kills approached 1,000 to 1,200 meters, but few were officially confirmed. That was the exception, not the doctrine. Captain C. Shaw, who examined German sniper training centers at the war's end, never saw a range exceeding 300 meters. German scopes were typically zeroed at 300 meters. That tells you where the real fighting happened. Now we move to what mattered in the field. The Kar-98K's official effective range was listed as 500 meters with iron sights. In practice, engaging targets beyond 300 meters with irons was difficult. Wind, movement, battlefield stress, all of it compressed that effective envelope. The rifle fired the 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge. Standard ball ammunition used a 154 grain Spitzer bullet with a muzzle velocity around 2,700 feet per second. Later in the war, heavier 196 grain rounds became standard for machine guns and some sniper ammunition. With iron sights, a trained rifleman could reliably hit man-sized targets out to 300 meters. Beyond that, you needed skill, experience, and luck. At 400 meters, the trajectory drop and wind drift started making hits uncertain. At 500, you were lobbing rounds and hoping. A scope changed the equation. With a 4x or 6x optic, effective range extended to 600 to 800 meters for skilled snipers. Some claimed hits beyond 1,000 meters, but those were rare and often unverifiable. The rifle's sights were graduated to 2,000 meters. That wasn't for aimed fire. That was suppressive fire, volume over precision. The idea was to keep enemy heads down, not necessarily to hit them. German infantry doctrine understood this. The squad revolved around the MG-34 or MG-42 machine gun. The machine gunner provided suppression and fire superiority. Riflemen supported the gun, carried ammunition, and engaged targets the machine gun couldn't. The Kar-98K fit that doctrine perfectly. It was accurate enough for precision shots under 300 meters, reliable enough to function in mud, snow, and dust, simple enough that conscripts could maintain it under field conditions. From here, the battlefield tells a different story. The Eastern Front pushed every weapon system to the limit. Temperatures dropped to -40°C in winter. Dust choked mechanisms in summer, and mud turned everything into a slog. The Kar-98K held up. German veterans consistently praised its reliability. It functioned when Gewehr 43 semi-automatics jammed. It worked when STG-44 assault rifles failed in extreme cold. But reliability and accuracy aren't the same thing. In the frozen forests of the Carpathians, at Stalingrad, in the Hungarian plains, German snipers used the Kar-98K to devastating effect. Matthäus Hetzenauer racked up 172 confirmed kills in just 6 months, from September 1944 to March 1945. Most of those kills came from positions forward of German lines, close to Soviet positions. According to his Knight's Cross recommendation, Hetzenauer fought daily in independent actions with exemplary bravery. He achieved his kills without regard for prolonged danger to his life. His boldness made him well known throughout the 3rd Gebirgsjäger Division. Hetzenauer used both a Kar-98K with a 6x scope and a Gewehr 43 with a 4x ZF 4-scope. When asked post-war which he preferred, he said snipers don't need semi-automatic weapons if used correctly as snipers. One shot, one kill. That was the doctrine. But here's what the veterans also said. They preferred to be much closer than maximum effective range. Hetzenauer and Allerberger both stated they wanted to be well inside 300 meters for reliability. A guaranteed hit at close range beat a possible hit at long range. German training emphasized this. Sniper schools taught fieldcraft, camouflage, patience, and shot discipline. They didn't teach 800-meter miracle shots. They taught 200-meter certainties. The rifle's accuracy supported this approach. Inside 300 meters, a well-maintained Kar-98K with quality ammunition was a surgical tool. Beyond 400 meters, even with a scope, hits became probabilistic. June 6, 1944, Normandy beaches, German defenders with Kar-98s faced Americans with M1 Garands. The Garand held 8 rounds and fired semi-automatically. The Kar-98K held 5 rounds and required manual bolt manipulation between shots. On paper, the American rifle had a massive advantage in firepower. In practice, German defensive positions negated much of that advantage. Dug-in defenders with Kar-98s, supported by MG-42s, inflicted horrific casualties on Allied troops crossing open ground. A widely repeated account claims Heinrich Seppelo, a German machine gunner at Omaha Beach, fired 12,000 rounds through 2 MG-42s, then switched to Kar-98 when ammunition ran low, firing approximately 400 rounds. However, the exact numbers remain unverified and likely exaggerated. Whether accurate or not, the defensive firepower was real. But as the war progressed and fighting moved inland, the Kar-98K's limitations became apparent. In the hedgerows of Normandy, in close-quarters urban combat, the bolt-action design struggled against semi-automatic rifles and submachine guns. German soldiers complained about the rate of fire disadvantage. One shot, work the bolt, reacquire the target, fire again. Against an American with a Garand firing as fast as he could pull the trigger, the German rifleman was outgunned. Accuracy couldn't compensate for volume of fire at close range. A mediocre shooter with a semi-automatic beat an expert with a bolt action in rapid engagements under 100 meters. The Wehrmacht tried to address this with increased production of semi-automatic Gewehr 43s and STG 44s assault rifles. But the Kar-98K remained the primary infantry weapon until the war's end. There simply weren't enough semi-automatics to go around. German military production chose to maintain Kar-98K production rather than fully transition to semi-automatics or assault rifles. The decision was partly logistical and partly industrial. It used the established 7.92mm ammunition. Factories were set up for its production. Changing would have disrupted the entire supply chain. So German infantry kept using the rifle their grandfathers had carried in a different form in World War I. It worked, it was accurate, but it wasn't enough. Let's talk about what made this rifle accurate when it worked. The Mauser 98 action is legendary for a reason. The bolt locks with two massive forward lugs and a safety lug at the rear. The non-rotating claw extractor grabs the cartridge rim as it leaves the magazine and holds it until ejection. Primary extraction is positive and reliable. The barrel on standard Kar-98K rifles was a three-step contour, meaning it changed diameter in 3 steps from chamber to muzzle. Not a heavy target barrel, but adequate for military use. Rifling was 4 grooves, right-hand twist, 1 turn in 240 millimeters. That's about 9.45 inches. Fast enough to stabilize the 154 grain and 196 grain bullets used in 7.92mm ammunition. The trigger on military Kar-98 was functional, not refined. Pull weight varied, but generally ran between 5 and 8 pounds. Creep was noticeable, but for combat purposes it was adequate. Snipers sometimes had triggers modified by unit armorers. The sights consisted of a barleycorn front post and a tangent rear sight adjustable to 2,000 meters. Battle sight setting was 100 to 300 meters, depending on production variant. Most soldiers kept it at the lowest setting and held over for longer shots. When scopes were added for sniper use, the Germans faced a problem. The standard Kar-98K wasn't designed for optics. The scope had to mount high enough to clear the bolt, or offset to the left. High turret mounts were common, and so were side rail mounts that placed the scope off-center. The ZF-41 scope deserves mention. It was a 1.5x optic intended for designated marksmen in infantry squads, not dedicated snipers. The idea was to improve hit probability at 200 to 400 meters for the best shot in each squad. In practice, deployment was limited. The 1.5x magnification wasn't enough for true long-range work, and the mounting system was awkward. Most German snipers used 4x or 6x scopes on turret or claw mounts. With a proper 6x scope, a well-maintained Kar-98K, and quality ammunition, exceptional rifles could approach 2 minutes of angle. Typical wartime service rifles shot around 3 to 4 minutes of angle, more than adequate for hitting a man's head at 400 meters or his torso at 600. But that's from a bench rest in ideal conditions with match ammunition. Add battlefield stress, fatigue, cold, wind, and a target that's shooting back, and that precision shrinks fast. After May 1945, millions of Kar-98s went into Soviet warehouses. The Red Army captured approximately 3 million rifles during the war's final year. They refurbished them, marked them with Soviet arsenal stamps, and stored them for future conflicts. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, Chinese Communist forces received Soviet-captured Kar-98Ks alongside Type Zhongjang rifles. The accuracy that had served German snipers on the Eastern Front. now served Chinese soldiers against American and UN forces. The same pattern repeated in Vietnam. North Vietnamese forces received Kar-98s from Soviet stocks. The rifle that had fought in Stalingrad and Normandy now appeared in the jungles of Southeast Asia. Israel received large quantities of Kar-98s after World War II, many from Czechoslovakian production. They converted many to 7.62 by 51 mm NATO and used them through the 1960s and 1970s. Israeli Defense Forces reserve units carried Kar-98s during the 1967 Six-Day War and the 1973 Yom Kippur War. In the 1990s, during the Yugoslav wars, Kar-98Ks reappeared on European battlefields. Combatants on all sides used them alongside modern automatic rifles. Photos from Bosnia show snipers using scoped Kar-98Ks in urban combat. As recently as 2019, ISIL insurgents were photographed with Kar-98s in Iraq. The rifle's service span stretched from 1935 to the 21st century, 80-plus years of continuous use in conflicts worldwide. Why did it last so long? Simple, it worked. The Mauser action was robust. The rifle could take abuse and keep functioning. Parts were interchangeable, ammunition was available, and most importantly, it was accurate enough for the job. In the hands of a trained marksman, the Kar-98K remained a deadly weapon regardless of the decade. Bolt-action rifles don't jam if maintained properly. They don't need batteries or electronics. They just work. So what's the truth about Kar-98K accuracy? By military standards of World War II, it was excellent. The German acceptance standard of 5 rounds in a 12-centimeter circle at 100 meters ensured every rifle leaving the factory met minimum specifications. For standard infantry use out to 300 meters, the Kar-98K was more than adequate. It could hit man-sized targets reliably at that range with iron sights. Soldiers who trained regularly could push that to 400 meters. With a scope in the hands of a trained sniper, effective range extended to 600 to 800 meters. Exceptional snipers made kills beyond 1,000 meters, but those were outliers, not standard performance. The rifle's accuracy was limited by ammunition quality, barrel condition, and shooter skill more than inherent design. Exceptional Kar-98Ks with quality ammunition could approach 2-minute of angle groups. Typical wartime service rifles shot 3 to 4 minutes of angle. That's fundamentally accurate for military purposes. What limited the Kar-98K wasn't precision. It was rate of fire. Against semi-automatic rifles like the M1 Garand or SVT-40, the bolt-action design put German infantry at a firepower disadvantage in rapid engagements. But for deliberate, aimed fire at medium range, the Kar-98K delivered. It was reliable in conditions that stopped semi-automatic rifles. It was simple enough for conscripts to maintain. It was accurate enough for the mission. German snipers achieved devastating results with it. Matthäus Hetzenauer's 345 confirmed kills. Sepp Allerberger's 257, countless others. Those numbers came from the rifle's fundamental accuracy combined with skilled shooters. The Kar-98K wasn't magic. It was engineering. Decades of Mauser development refined into a production rifle that balanced accuracy, reliability, and manufacturability. It wasn't the most accurate rifle of World War II. The British Lee Enfield No. 4 and American M1 both had their advantages. But for what the Wehrmacht needed, a rifle that worked everywhere, hit reliably at combat ranges, and could be produced by the millions, the Kar-98K delivered. And that's the real reason it shaped the battlefield of the 20th century. The Kar-98K's accuracy wasn't about minute of angle precision or 1,000-meter miracle shots. It was about a rifle that hit where you aimed, worked when you needed it, and kept working for decades after the war ended. From Normandy to Stalingrad, to Korea to Vietnam to the Balkans, the Kar 98K proved one thing: fundamental accuracy, combined with absolute reliability, beats theoretical perfection every time. Which weapon should we break down next?